We have a very special guest joining us. Her healthcare story is powerful, a story she shared with President Joe Biden on national television. And her story continues today as she fights for healthcare for all Americans. Please welcome LauraPackard. Laura, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on and sharing your story. And your story begins in 2017. So if you would just kind of take everybody through this, it's really amazing.
Well, in 2017, about 6 years ago, I walked into a doctor's office with a nagging cough and walked out with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. And that changed everything. Thankfully, I had good health insurance through the Affordable Care Act, which was able to pay for the 6 months of chemotherapy and month of radiation treatment it took for me to be here in remission today. But it wasn't that easy because the day after my first chemotherapy appointment, Republicans in the U.S. House voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which was my insurance. And as a small business owner, there was no plan B for me. I'm so grateful that I had good insurance through the ACA because before the Affordable Care Act, I had junk insurance. And if I still had that junk insurance, today I would be bankrupt or dead.
So what would, had you not had the coverage under the ACA, Affordable Health Care Act, what would that have cost you out of pocket, your treatment? And this, your entire treatment regimen, it went on for 6 months or was it longer because you had chemo and radiation as well?
It was about 6 months of chemo and then a month of radiation. So I was in treatment. I was diagnosed in April, and I was in treatment from May through the end of 2017. And it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I couldn't have been able to afford that without good insurance.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's just crazy. I think that especially people that haven't gone through a serious illness. I think that a lot of people don't understand the cost involved, and and I think what's really interesting, so as you said, so the day after your first chemo, the Republican-controlled House voted to dismantle the ACA, and now, so when you heard about this, I would imagine, I mean, how did that make you feel? That you have the stress of this illness that's been diagnosed, and you're beginning treatment. What was that like when you heard that the House had effectively voted to repeal this?
Well, I was on my couch the next day. This is the first time I'd ever gone through chemo, so I didn't really know what was going to happen. So I'm on my couch bracing for the worst, and then watching as they try to strip away the one thing that's keeping me alive.
And so, okay, so the House strips this away, and it has to go to the Senate, for approval. So, what was the length of time between when the House Republicans voted to repeal this? What was that length of time before it went to the Senate, and where it was? What I understand, it was defeated only by one vote.
Mm-hmm. Well, all that spring and summer, Republicans in the House and the Senate were trying to come up with various ways to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And they never had a good replacement, especially for people with pre-existing conditions, which I'm now going to be for the rest of my life. So it seemed like every day they would have a new plan, and it would be just as terrible, just in different ways, because there's no way to offer good insurance and tax breaks for rich people and, please your corporate donors. There's no way to make it cheaper and still offer good care. So all of their plans would have kicked back money to their rich donors and left the 150 million Americans with pre-existing conditions to fend for ourselves.
So if the Senate had voted to approve the repeal of this, what would you have done at that point?
Well, I mean, my options were not good. Leave the country, maybe, but it takes time to establish residency in another country with a better medical system than ours. So, it's not as simple as I'm in the middle of treatment. I can't just move to Canada or Mexico or somewhere else. And if they canceled my insurance policy immediately, how do I pay for the tens of thousands of dollars each round of chemo cost? So there were no good options for me or people like me, anybody that was relying on their health insurance back then.
And I think what's crazy is that it really was defeated by just a razor thin margin, one vote. So that one vote could have the repercussions of that would have would have been insane. Now during all of this too, I understand that President Trump blocked you. What was the story that led up to that? Although I have to say that's kind of a badge of honor to be blocked by him. But what caused him to block you? And I understand later he was forced legally to unblock you.
Well, I was blocked by President Trump on Twitter in September of 2017. And I have been tweeting at him all year. So I got up the next day to find out I have been blocked. So I couldn't tell you exactly which tweet pushed him over the edge. You would have to ask Trump that. But yes, so I was shocked and amused to find out that the President of the United States was so upset by my words that he blocked me. So, I mean, that just goes to show how little self-control he had. But yes, the Knight First Amendment Institute brought a court case against Trump for blocking his constituents. I am one and you're another. And that court case was making its way through the courts. I was blocked too soon to be on the initial court case, but in their follow-up letter to the Department of Justice, I was in that letter. And presumably due to that pressure, I was then unblocked in 2018 by President Trump. This is, of course, before his entire account was shut down after fomenting insurrection for January 6th.
Yeah, I'm really curious why he blocked you. So maybe when he's in jail and they have visiting hours, I'll go by and I'll ask him that question. Orange Man has some thin skin, obviously. Now I understand too that Lauren Boebert has blocked you.
Yes, I was blocked by Lauren Boebert. I think it was last year. So she also, I guess she didn't appreciate my op-eds calling out her votes against cancer patients. She voted against the National Donor Marrow Registry. So can you imagine, her and I think two other people were the only people that voted against this registry that helps cancer patients and others that need a bone marrow match to stay alive. And apparently Lauren Boebert hates cancer patients.
Wow. Well, to be honest, I'm really not surprised by that. She's definitely not the sharpest tool in the shed, and I think that's a thing that just completely blows me away. Is it would seem like healthcare is such a universal concern. I don't understand why Republicans are so against this. Do you have any sort of theories? I mean, it seems like common sense. Why would anyone not support that?
Well, also, speaking of Lauren Boebert in particular, she used to own a failing restaurant that, in fact, has failed. But I can't imagine that she provided health care to her employees. So her employees probably got health care, if they got it at all, through the Affordable Care Act. In fact, she probably got her health care through the Affordable Care Act. So I can't understand, as a small business person, why she would be against small business people and small business employees having good health care.
That should be a question someone asks her on the record. I would be very, very curious about that. Okay, so Trump unblocks you, but I understand after the Senate defeated this bill, Trump was back at it supporting another bill to repeal the ACA. So what was that about?
Trump promised that he would have this great and wonderful healthcare solution for people, and he never delivered on that in 4 years. So in 2017, they tried several times to repeal the Affordable Care Act outright, and then they just sort of did sniping more behind the scenes. So they never actually succeeded. They never got the votes that they needed to destroy it, and thankfully so, because they never had a replacement. And you can't take away healthcare from tens of millions of Americans without giving them something to replace it. So, thankfully, they did not succeed. But you can see that if they ever get the opportunity, they will try to do it again.
So, okay, so in 2017, you're continuing your treatment, and you confront Senator Dean Heller at a public forum, and let's watch what happens.
And millions of Americans. Why are you voting for me to lose my health care? Without it, I will die.
I'm not quite sure. We did eliminate the tax provision within Obamacare, and that was the individual mandate. We got rid of the individual mandate. 90,000.
Wow, that was something else. So what was his health care record that you were confronting him on?
Well, Dean Heller, he tried to stay out of the healthcare fights at the beginning of 2017, but eventually he had to come out and say one way or another. And so when he supported bills that would repeal the Affordable Care Act with no replacement, he needed to be held accountable for that. And so he was hiding from his Nevada constituents. He never did any public events. So I think I went to a few protests outside his office, outside of his high dollar fundraisers. He finally did one event that entire year in Las Vegas that was open to the public. And I went to that. And when I asked him about his record, I was thrown out.
So yeah, so you see these security guards, I'm guessing, that are coming up and talking to you. And of course, we can't hear what they're saying. So what did they say to you? What were the grounds that they were booting you out of this public forum?
Well, they didn't. They just said to the extent of you have to go. They didn't really give a reason. And at the time, this was just after one of my final radiation treatments. So I had just done 6 months of chemo and then weeks of radiation treatment. So I was not in a physically very strong state. So when they hauled me off, I wasn't going to fight them. It was enough that I made it into that room in one piece.
Yeah, well, it's certainly cowardly. But I think that's what seems to happen a lot of times with these Republicans. You confront them on this, and a lot of them don't even hold public forums or town halls or anything. Once they're in office, they just sort of rest on their laurels and they don't talk to the people that they're representing. Now, he actually ended up losing his Senate race, correct?
Yes, Jackie Rosen won, I think, by 5 points. So now she's Senator Jackie Rosen.
Awesome. Okay. Now, so let's fast forward. So the following year, 2018, you founded Healthcare Voices. What is Healthcare Voices?
We're a nonprofit that offers media training and support for healthcare activists, or really any activist. You can go to healthcarevoices.org/learn and watch our public trainings on how to write a letter to the editor, how to talk to a reporter, how to share your story, to make it possible for people to share their stories, because these elected officials need to hear from us when they are making votes that affect our very lives.
And okay, and then after this, you moved to Colorado. So when I was watching one of your videos, you explain why you had to move, which completely blew me away. So tell everyone the reason you had to move to Colorado.
Well, at the beginning of 2019, I moved to Colorado, and that's because I needed to make sure that I would have access to health insurance, because for the rest of my life, my cancer could recur. I could get a secondary type of cancer because of the treatments I went through. So health insurance is never going to be optional for me. I have to do whatever it takes to have health insurance. And Colorado was one of a handful of states at the time that had state level protections for people with pre-existing conditions. So even if they managed to succeed in Washington in dismantling the Affordable Care Act, I would still have been able to get health insurance in Colorado. So at the time, there were 4 states, Colorado was one of them, that had those protections. So I moved to Colorado because, again, health insurance is never going to be optional for me.
And your Senator Cory Gardner, he's also actively trying to repeal the ACA, correct?
Yes, he was also one of the people that was voting to repeal the Affordable Care Act with no replacement. So I did a lot of protests and events outside of his office because, unsurprisingly, Cory Gardner also did not hold any public town halls. In fact, I was on a statewide bus tour, the Cardboard Cory bus tour, where we took a cardboard cutout of Cory Gardner because the real Cory Gardner wouldn't talk to his constituents. So I think we did something like 10, 20 public events across the state because our senator was missing in action.
Wow. And he was defeated, correct?
Yes, Senator John Hickenlooper is now our second senator.
Okay. Now, in 2020, you had the honor of sharing your story with President Joe Biden on national television. So let's watch that clip.
Hey, Laura, how you doing?
Yes, we can.
How you doing? Well, you beat Hodgkin's lymphoma. God love you. But during it all, Trump was trying to rip away your coverage. The day you got your first chemo, Republicans voted to gut the ACA. I can't imagine what it must have been like going to sleep at night wondering what to do.
Ever since I was diagnosed, every night I'd go to bed concerned about what news I would get in the morning. And even today, they're still trying to take away our health care, even during a pandemic.
Look, we're going to make sure we don't lose that ACA. We're going to provide a Medicare-like option as a public option. And any state where there is if you qualify for Medicaid and the state hasn't provided it, you'd automatically be enrolled. I'm going to protect you like I tried to protect my own family. And I promise you that.
That was amazing. So what was it like sharing your story with President Biden? That must have been really, really cool. Were you nervous at all?
Well, this was during the summer of 2020. So this was in the middle of the pandemic. So what happened for the people that were a part of the Democratic National Convention is they shipped us camera gear and a phone and so on, so that set it up in my office. And so I was talking to Biden on the phone, and also we all were talking to each other, the other healthcare storytellers. Okay. So it was a very strange experience, but it was pretty exciting.
Wow. And then in 2021, on the 11th anniversary of the Affordable Care Act, you got to introduce President Obama, who wrote this act. That must have been pretty cool as well.
Yeah, and again, because of the pandemic, this was all virtual instead of in person. But it was great to meet the person without whom I might not be here today. So I was so grateful to be able to thank President Obama for leading the charge on the Affordable Care Act and not giving up, because there were times where that fight looked very bad, where they had a bill through the House and they didn't have the Senate. We lost one Senate seat. Scott Brown won the surprise election in Massachusetts, so there were no longer 60 votes. They had to finish up the bill through reconciliation. And for a while there, it looked like they were going to not be able to do it. And if they hadn't been able to do it, if we're going back to how things looked before the Affordable Care Act was signed into law in 2010, I used to have a junk insurance policy. And I don't think that it would have covered the treatment that I needed to be here today.
Okay. And we actually have this clip with President Obama. Let's watch.
Hey, everybody. And thank you so much, Laura, for not only the introduction, but for the incredible fighting spirit that you've shown. And you're representative of so many people that, as I've traveled around the country, I've had a chance to meet and interact with and get to know, who know what it's like to be vulnerable in our healthcare system, and now are fighting on behalf of others to make sure that they're not in the same position.
All right, that was great. So how is your health today, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm doing great. I just saw my doctor, and I actually graduated from my oncologist. I don't need to see her anymore. I go back to my primary care. And so, I'm going to need blood work and be tracked for late-term problems with all the treatments that I went through for the rest of my life. But
Okay.
I don't have an oncologist anymore. I'm doing great.
That's fantastic news. That's really fantastic news. Now, the not so fantastic news is the Republicans are still going after the ACA, correct?
Yes. Right now, in the fight about the debt ceiling, Republicans are threatening to not pay America's bills. And part of their ransom note is cuts to Social Security, to Medicare, to Medicaid, and to the Affordable Care Act. They haven't even decided on one ransom note. Different factions of the Republican Party are writing their own ransom notes. But this is one of the things they're coming after.
Wow. Yeah, that's. I continually shake my head at all of the crazy, just stuff that continues to come out of that party that makes absolutely no sense, and the fanaticism and just the sort of lack of empathy, I think, towards people in general. It just boggles my mind. Now, you're continuing to advocate and fight this fight. So what are you currently doing to help battle this crazy party with trying to get rid of the ACA?
Well, we're fighting those cuts because this fight is going to be ongoing for the next few months. I think they're saying now the debt ceiling limit will be hit in August. So for the next few months, these Republicans are going to be trying to put in cuts to the healthcare programs that we depend on. So fighting those cuts. But there's also good news. New Mexico, the state just to the south of us, they just passed a bill that will create a study to start the process of Medicaid for all, letting anybody in the state to buy into Medicaid. So Medicare is a federally administered program. And so any sort of Medicare for all program would have to be done by Congress. And you have to get 60 votes in the Senate to pass the filibuster, et cetera, et cetera. It's hard. But states can experiment with Medicaid buy-ins on a state level.
Got it. Okay. So how can people get involved and support the work you're doing, your advocacy on this issue, and just get involved in general? This is something we definitely don't want to let fall off the radar.
They are welcome to join me at healthcarevoices.org. Sign up and get our updates. Pay attention to what's happening in your state, because with that divided government in Congress right now, there isn't going to be a whole lot coming out of the federal government. So the most exciting stuff and also the most bad stuff is probably happening in your state.
Got it. Okay. Well, firstly, I'm so glad that your health is doing so much better, and that you've graduated from not having an oncologist anymore. And of course, we wish you the best. But also, thank you for your advocacy on this. As I said in the beginning, it's I think a lot of times legislation, unless it really touches you, it's sort of hard to wrap your head around. And your story is so powerful, and the fight in you to really keep the Affordable Care Act going. It's really, my hat's off to you. So, Laura, thank you very much, and we look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thank you. I'm excited that the Affordable Care Act is having its 13th birthday, and hopefully there will be many more years to come. So if people want to follow my story and get more healthcare information, you can find me on Twitter at LauraPackard, and Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at LauraPackard Activist.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Laura.